SMNI, defining true press freedom.
Yes, good evening. Live na live po tayo ngayon. Nakikinig po tayo ng presidential interview sa SMNI.
Sige lang, hinga lang ng malalim.
Yep, sabi. Si Kuya Ju Pao. Kuya Ju Pao, ang next nang i-interview po si President niya. President talaga. Senator Bongbong Marcos. Sure win, boss. Alam mo siya lang inabangan ko. Alam ko siya na yung susunod eh. Ito na.
Pro, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview. We're down to our last candidate. Ito na po ang huling kandidato na haharap sa ating panelists sa araw na ito.
Sa gitna ng samot-saring isyong ibinabato laban sa kanyang pamilya,
Dinig po tayo.
nanatiling matibay at may paninindigan para sa bayan. Bitbit ang mga pangakong pagbabago para sa ikabuutan ng bansa. Trabaho para sa mga Pilipino.
Kuya Ju Pao.
Industrialisasyon, kalidad na edukasyon, reforma sa iba't ibang sektor, at pagkakaisa ng sambayanang Pilipino ang sentro ng kanyang kampanya.
Ng Republika ng Pilipinas, sinabi ko na ako'y tatakbo dahil ang aking layunin, ang aking dating bansa ay ipagkain sa muli ang sambayanang Pilipino. Pagandahin po natin ang ating minamahal na bansang Pilipinas. Sama-sama po tayong habang
Tumatakbong Pangulo mula sa Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr.
Kunin ko lang pa yung ano, so, ano pa.
You may now sit down, Senator Marcos.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
May we request the audience to please sit down so we can start the program.
I brought all my relatives.
Everyone, can we ask everyone to please sit down so we can start the program? Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you. Okay. Senator Marcos, you have the floor, and the panelists will be asking you questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Marcos.
Good meeting you, ma'am.
If this were, I've never been to a campaign rally, but if this looks like it, and maybe multiplied so many times over, I can imagine what you're feeling is like euphoria, isn't it? Because we're not even involved and we're feeling euphoric here.
It's very encouraging, ma'am. That's true.
Okay, this is the second time we're going through this, but this time it will be banter. Nothing aggressive nor belligerent. You have the thickest portfolio here. I counted more than 50 pages which were submitted to the network and which were given to us.
Madami,
So, I have 1,000 questions, but I have 3 other colleagues here. Maybe I'll ask something which is right in my alley, and I think I have asked this also in my post in the social media. And post-Ukraine, assuming that you have a peace agreement within the next 2 weeks, which is more likely, do you see a new political and economic order, but this time you have other political actors like Moscow, Beijing, and even Tehran?
Yes.
What's your take on that?
There will be a new world order. Because I have, I think, watching Ukraine and seeing the developments, which are not exactly going the way of that the President Putin would have wanted it to. I suspect there will be domestic implications to whatever the peace agreement is going to be. I hope you're right, ma'am, that it will be done in 2 weeks, because we are the whole entire world is suffering. But there will be a very big change, because the how do you say, the idea, I think some of the analysts have said, I don't know if you agree with this, is that President Putin is trying to reconstruct or recreate the Soviet Union under another name. So perhaps this was his move. Should he weaken as a political figure in his own country, in Russia, then certainly the policy, that policy of trying to gain territory through whatever means, as he says, because to provide for him a buffer to NATO, whatever the reason might truly be. I think that will have to be re-studied by whoever will be most dominant in Russian domestic politics after Putin. So yes, I believe there will be a new world order, and I think I am certain that Tehran and Beijing are watching very, very closely what will happen to Ukraine. There will be a geopolitical balance of power. It also depends on what the reaction of the EU and the United States will be. I think the United States we can predict fairly accurately. EU is in a more difficult spot simply because they are highly dependent for their energy to Russia, and how they will balance that. I know that the President Biden has just signed with the EU a deal to supply from the United States and from other countries 15 billion tons of gas, which will cover some of the needs of the EU. But again, that's not something that can instantly be made, to instantly be applied. There will be a transition period because it is a very large economic infrastructure that has been developed for Europe to take advantage of the gas supplies out of Russia. These are all terribly large forces, and inevitably it will change things.
Yeah, well, it seems like you have a more dire scenario, future scenario in mind. But what I have used really is from a content analytical perspective, using events data analysis, meaning I'm paying attention to the verbs being used by the negotiators. and this is not Pollyannish, by the way, Mr. Marcos. It's just that I feel that Putin will not allow the conflict to spill over. It will encapsulate within the Ukraine conflict area. And that, yes, I still believe that within the next 2 weeks you have a peace agreement.
I sincerely hope so, because misunderstandings, mistakes can occur. With Poland being right there on the border of Ukraine, we already have had reports of missiles that mistakenly flew into Poland. And these are the kind of things that we have to be very careful about. I think maybe that is one thing that they can agree upon, Russia and the West, as we have referred to it often.
Mr. Marcos, earlier, I don't know if you were around already when I asked questions about the projected state visit of Vladimir Putin here in the Philippines. Because the Duterte administration has only so many more breaths to take before the end of their regime, of their tenure. When you become president, will you honor that invitation that Duterte had given to him to do a state visit? Not just a visit, a state visit.
Well, certainly. Why not? We have diplomatic relations with Moscow. We should continue to honor that agreement that we have with Russia. And we must continue to, again, cultivate the relationships that are beneficial to the country. And it's not, as long as we make our position very clear that self-determination is an important principle as far as the Philippines is concerned. And in that context, then we can still speak on many other subjects with Russia.
Yeah, so that means you're not telegraphing something to the United States of America by welcoming Vladimir Putin in a state visit.
It need not be Russia or Vladimir Putin, any country. I think that would like to come and visit, and we would feel that there is something beneficial to be gained by furthering, strengthening relationships between our two countries is something that we should always be open to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Marcos.
Good evening.
Ang tanong ko po ay ito, ang nabanggit niyo po ang phrase na New World Order na sa tingin niyo ay maaaring mangyari pagkatapos ng peace treaty between Ukraine and Russia. You see that the world will be restructured around a new framework or a new geopolitical order. So my question is this, I hope that you realize the burden or the special task that you have as a future chief architect of our foreign policy, because in the past drawing of world orders, the Philippines never played a role in determining its position in that world order. For example, between the wars of Spain and the United States, it's the United States that defined our position in that new world order. When the United Nations was instituted after post-World War II, we were still at the coattails of the United States. But now we are an independent country. So my question is, when this new world order that you think would happen after a peace treaty gets concluded between Ukraine and Russia, how will you position our country in this new geopolitical order?
It very clearly will depend on what the exit strategy will be for the West, for EU, and for Putin in the peace agreement that we hope they will sign. What the nature of that agreement will be. Will it be status quo? The forces that are in Ukraine, the Russian forces that are, and Belarusian forces that are already in Ukraine, will they just stay where they are, status quo? Will they be told to withdraw? I only say that because it is very important to Putin's position domestically. He is in a very precarious place because it has not gone according to plan. I suspect that he was hoping that it would be a similar situation as it was in Crimea, where they pretty much just walked in. With very little resistance. But then they prepared Crimea for a long time. They were helping the rebel groups, the Russian-speaking groups, and they were developing them. And they built a corridor on the east side of Crimea, within which the Russians could cross the border very easily. That hasn't been the case in Ukraine. And so, depending on how it is viewed, the peace treaty that we hope will come, it depends on how it is viewed by the local domestic political scenarios in Russia itself. That, whatever the reaction will be to Putin, will fix one of the variables in the geopolitical new world order. So we still have to wait to see what happens. I'm sure China is waiting with bated breath to see what's going to happen here. Tehran, I'm sure, as the professor mentioned, is clearly a player in this regard. And in the Middle East now, so far it has not affected the Middle East in any way. It works out for Vladimir Putin. China might be emboldened to make their own moves. Tehran might be emboldened to make their own moves. On the other hand, if it is very much a rejection of the idea of Putin of taking over a country, then perhaps that will also influence their thinking as to what can and cannot be done for their own interests. So yes, I don't think we can predict very closely, because we cannot. I hope to be as optimistic as the professor, but I don't see it happening in 2 weeks, to be perfectly honest. I hope it is. I hope it does, because the economic effects on every single person in the world has been enormous. And it is going to be enormous for a good long while. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Sir, since we have a mutual defense treaty with the United States, that would affect, I'm sure that would play a role in how, our country would position ourselves in this new geopolitical world order. So my question is, to what extent will you allow the United States influence your actual decision making in how you're going to craft the future foreign policy of the Philippines when that new world order has already taken shape?
Well, we have a very special relationship with the United States, and it's something that we have had and developed over 100 years, starting from being essentially a colony to a very strong partner here, especially in this part of the world, in the region. And that, I think, has been a good thing for both countries, both for the United States and for the Philippines. And that I think we can still depend on that. But the scenario that you spoke about, where we historically have always been with the United States, is still, I think, a carryover, a hangover of the Cold War. And we discussed it a little bit the last time. And I don't think the geopolitics of today are the same. And we now have to tread that very fine line to make sure that it's the Philippines, it's the Philippine interests that are the primacy of Philippine interests in anything. Now, in geopolitics, especially, we have another superpower 600 kilometers from our coastline, China. That puts, again, the Philippines in quite a precarious position. We're lucky because we're important geopolitically, even we're strategically. We are unlucky because we are important geopolitically, and we've become a bit of a hot potato when it comes to that. So we definitely have to consider what is best always for the Philippines. And how do we achieve that? with our existing partnerships, alliances, as they stand now, with what will be a new world order. Will it be a very big change? Will it be a small, slight change? Will it be a big change for Russia and a small change for everybody else? There are many moving parts to this thing, and it's not something that is easily definable. But I think once the peace agreement is made, we will study it very, very closely, and we will ask our best experts to determine what is the effect in these other countries. What is the effect to Tehran, to Iran? What's the effect? How does it change their thinking in Beijing? How does it change the thinking in Washington, D.C.? These are the big players. These are the people we have to deal with. So yes, it's that I wish I could give you a categorical answer, but until we know exactly what that peace treaty will contain, it's very difficult to know what will happen after that in Russia. How will the power structure change? Will Putin be removed? Will he still maintain his position? All of these things are going to play a part in what it will look like after that peace agreement.
Senator, good evening. With this as a backdrop, the discussion with Russia, Ukraine, I was wondering if you can pivot to domestic concerns, particularly your energy policy.
Yeah.
Because as you said, the conflict is being felt worldwide, and among the things that we are seeing are sky-high fuel prices. But how would you address this? What would be your policies, particularly with energy security, going beyond this issue?
In the past week or so, since the war in Ukraine began, I have been espousing a policy of subsidizing all oil imports. Because the idea is that, yes, transport is the first sector that's going to be affected, but everyone will be affected. And therefore, if we are to support everyone, we have to subsidize all oil imports, in my view. However, I have been crunching the numbers. We can't do it. We cannot afford it. It's that simple. So we have to focus now. Maliwanag, yung mga transport group talagang naghihingalo dahil dito sa pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Pero alam naman natin, pag tumaas ang presyo ng langis, sabay-sabay susunod na yung mga iba. So we have to focus in the sectors that will actually that will mitigate the effects of the oil price rise. Perhaps there still exists the option of perhaps giving a tax holiday on the excise taxes to the oil for the oil imports. However, the pandemic is not over. We do not know what is going to happen next. When each time we thought tapos na, it came back. And I'm sure all of us after Christmas, after the Omicron hit at the end of January, sabi natin siguro baka tapos na ito, baka wala na. But then we hear news now about Korea, about China, about Hong Kong, that they're locking down again. So we need those funds. Well, the government doesn't need the funds, people need the funds. And so we will still have to continue to collect as much as we can in preparation for any possible occurrence in terms of the pandemic. Baka may bagong strain, baka may babalik. But I don't think we will ever return to a time of lockdown anymore.
Senator, just before we go on break, I was wondering if you can clarify your position on the oil price stabilization fund. Because there's been some talk in social media to report, and I don't know if you are. Of course, the appeal is that there will be subsidy when prices are high.
Yes.
But the downside is that prices will remain high because when global prices dip.
Yeah.
And there's the argument, of course, that the market is always more efficient in determining prices. Could you clarify your position?
No, I think it is not to change the price of the oil. It's to change the rate of change. It is to try and mitigate the rate of change. So that, let's say, if the price increase is from Sunday to Monday,
instead of increasing the full, let's say we're going to increase by, I don't know, 5 pesos, let's say. Instead of doing it all in one shot, we do it slowly because we have a stabilization fund. There is no way to bring the price of oil down from the Philippines. We are at the mercy of the oil producers. We in the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, are 0.07% of the fossil fuel market, therefore have very little influence on pricing. And we produce very little in terms of oil production. Malampaya is about, they say will dry up in the next 2 or 3 years. So yes, it is a very, very big problem. But the OPSF that I proposed is really to lessen the impact and instead of making the impact instantaneous, we will try to make it happen over a longer time to give businessmen, consumers more time to adjust and to plan for the new regime of oil prices and oil products that would come to the Philippines.
Sino? Overtime pa?
We'll have to take a short break for now. Yes.
It's okay. Sorry, Rolex.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've become the symbol of the human time clock. But the panel will still have a lot of questions for you, Senator Marcos. Unfortunately, we have to interrupt for a short break. So to everyone watching, don't go away. The Deep Probe SMNI presidential interviews will be right back.
Ayan. Interview muna. Palakpakan nga natin yan. Smart magic na lang. Sabi ni Kuya Jupaw, smart magic na lang ang ikatatalo. Sabi si Kuya Jupaw. Share mo na, Kuya Jupaw. Ako, Mami Jima, sa Isla Piiliti. Smart magic na lang ikakatalo ni BBM. Sabi ni Kuya Jupaw. Mega love shout out po, 4 million in my house. 5 million in my house. Maraming salamat po. Nag-live lang ako para kay BBM. Yung kinuha ko yung portion niya, kaya sandali lang to, wala pa yatang 1 oras. Kasi parang 6 lang sila na sumali. Oo, si BBM lang ang kandidatong hindi marunong manira, sabi ni Mami Jima. Tinabangan ko yung niya, yung live niya. Ayan. Tuto Talumo, Miguel Love shout out po, may moderator na po kayo. Tuto Talumo, may moderator na po kayo, mayroon na po kayong jacket. Pwede na po kayong mag-comment, magbaba po kayo ng jacket nyo. Pwede po kayong dikitan ni Mami Jima, ang aming minamahal na Mami Mamyan. Kailan na Mami Jima ang balik mo sa habang patalastas pa? Ang balik mo sa ibang bansa po. Kailan na po ang balik nyo? Maingay. Miguel Love shout out po, 2 million in my house. Ayan, si Kuya Toto. Pwede po kayong, may jacket na po kayo. Nakikinig po tayo ng presidential interview. Ang huli pang in-interview si BBM po. Yun na lang po ang kinuha ko, kinat ko siya. Yung huli po, pinanood ko lang pero hindi ko siya ni-live na pakinggan. Ito lang, si BBM. Binigyan talaga sila ng pagkakataon na talaga, ma-discuss nila yung gusto nilang mga plataforma. Para nagkikwentuhan lang sila eh. At yun, ang maganda doon, may oras silang sumagot. Opo. Presidential po, interview po ito, interview. Hindi po debate. Si BBM na po ito, si BBM. May 3 na ang balik. May 3. Si BBM ang leading ngayon ba? Sa ngayon po siya, nag-aagawan po sila sa pwesto ni, ni Leni Robredo at si BBM. Siya po ang leading ngayon. Yes, Brad Tricks TV, Miguel Love shout out. Thank you for coming sa aking live. Thank you so much po. Please share na lang po sa inyong mga group dyan. Pakishare na lang. Fredricks, thank you for coming sa aking live. 2 million in my house, maraming salamat po. Habang naka-live pa po, pwede po tayong chat-chat dyan. Ano pa ba? Inaantay po natin at nakapatalastas lang po siya ang presidential candidate interview. Presidential candidate interview. Okay, watching from Canada. Oh, wow. Sir, from Canada. Thank you po. Baka pwede nyo naman pong i-share po ang aking live. Maraming salamat po. Si BBM po ang ini-interview kaso po nakapapatalastas po tayo. Ayaw ni BBM ng debate kasi hindi maiwasan na hindi siya sasagot. Ayun. Maganda rin to kasi nabibigyan talagang pagkakataon yung ipahiwatig yung kanyang mga gustong sasabihin. Yan, nakapatalastas lang po tayo. Antayin lang po natin. Maganda rin po eh. Gusto kasi yung mga ganito eh, debate, interview. Yung sa senatorial, di ko pa nakikita. Pero alam ko mayroon. Napadaan lang at nag-thumbstack na ako doon. Uy, salamat po. Sana po, pag nagla-live po, mapunta po kayo. At paki-thumbstack na rin, Kuya, totoo ang aking yan pong nakapin ko. Yun yung kaninang kuha ko po sa nag-erap na naman ang Taal Volcano kanina mga alas 7 pasado ng umaga. Meron pa akong upload na latest po. Tagal na patalastas lang. Salamat po ng marami po. God bless po. Kuya Toto Talumo, napadaan lang at nag-thumbs-up. Salamat. Thank you so much po. Thank you so much po. Ang galing naman. Good challenge. Ayan, si Kuya Toto. Makapag-ano rin sa kayo. Ang laki na rin pala ng bahay ni Kuya Toto. Yan po, magtaano po ako. Ay, dati po tayo magkadikit. Alam, dikit kami. Kuya Toto, dikit po tayo. 1 million in my house, maraming salamat. Kuya Toto, dikit po tayo. Dikit pala tayo eh. Ayan na. Ayan na po.
Nagbabalik po tayo sa The Deep Probe, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview. And right before the break, the conversation between presidential candidate Senator Marcos and the panelists was spanning several issues, including the geopolitical conflicts and the oil price crisis. Now we will resume the questions from the panels.
Magandang gabi po, Senator. Good evening, Rolex. Ang katanungan ko po ay tungkol sa power. Alam niyo po yung IPIRA, hinati yung bansa natin. Electric Power Reforms Industry Act, IPIRA. Ngayon po ganito, recently ang Malacanang po ay naglabas, pinirma ng Pangulo, Executive Order 164, adding nuclear power to the energy mix. And among others, to study the viability kung pwede pa natin i-operate yung BMPP at ang iba pang mga facilities para sa paggamit ng nuclear energy. Pwede mo malaman kung ano yung isip nyo po tungkol dito? Kasi po mangyayari sa sunod na termino, ang 18 milestones. Ito po yung unang hakbang lamang.
Marami talagang pinag-uusapan. Energy is hard. Ito, aaminin ko sa inyo, talagang pinag-aaralan ko, napakahirap ayusin. Dahil nga, yung ating sistema, the IPIRA law, marami talaga naka-contain dyan na kailangan pag-aralan ulit. Because ang reklamo sa buong bansa, both na consumers lamang at saka yung mga negosyante. Kasi lagi natin napapag-usapan mga foreign investors na nagre-reklamo sa power, pati local investors. Kaya ang investment sa Pilipinas is not capital intensive.
yung mga investment sa Pilipinas, short term lang, kuminsan hot money lang ang pumapasok, pasok-labas lang yan. It doesn't build anything. So, that is, it is a major problem. At kung titignan natin ang mga projection sa pangyayari, ngayon, just as a perfect example, narinig na siguro naman ng lahat, na sinasabi na baka sa eleksyon, magkakaroon ng brownout. Kaya dahil nasa gitna na tayo ng summer, ng tag-araw. Kaya yan ang maliwanag na maliwanag, kulang na talaga ang power supply doon sa ating requirements. At saka yung idadagdag pa dapat natin para makapag-industrialize tayo ng mabuti. Kaya it's something that has to be attended to. In other words, kailangan natin lahat. Kailangan natin lahat ng makuha natin na power sources para mabigyan tayo ng mas mura at mas malawak at mas reliable na power supply. Ngayon, maaari nating i-expand yung ating hydro, expand natin yung ating geothermal, but there's a very simple idea when it comes to the energy sector. It's something called the base load. The base load is the load that never goes away. The demand that never goes away. Kahit gabi, kahit araw. Ito na yung mga planta na nagpapatakbo. So that base load has to be satisfied. Kaya kung hindi umihip ang hangin, paano yung wind power? Kung gabi, paano yung solar power? Kailangan pa rin ng traditional. Ngayon, doon tayo mamimili. Although it's not traditional for the Philippines, nuclear power is already considered a traditional power source. So it has to be looked into. Yung sa BNPP, nag-offer na, because if you, ang Korea has, I believe, 5 sister plants to the Westinghouse plant in BNPP. And they have offered, I always say it's ironic that the names of their plants are Core 1, Core 2, Core 3, Core 4, Core 5. Pero hindi tayo nagkaroon kahit isa. But they have offered to come with their technical people, and they have offered to come to give us an idea. Pwede pa ba ito? Because kahit pa paano, it was the BNPP, the Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, was supposed to go online with 650 megawatts in 1986. That's a long time ago. Marami ng bagong technologies, marami ng bagong requirements. So we'll see. We have to. I think we should be open to our Korean friends to come and to tell us if this is still viable or you have to do something else. When it comes to nuclear power as an idea, well, let's just follow the science, because dito naging political sa Pilipinas. It's also political in other places, but in our particular case, the reason we have no nuclear power plant at all is pure politics. Did not really follow the science. So we have to look into it, because there are even after Fukushima, when everybody was saying nuclear power is going to, we have to rethink kailangan natin pag-aralan ulit yan, mukhang delikado. Walang nagbago ng kanilang pagplano na pagpatayo ng nuclear power plant kahit saan. Amerika tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Sa France, the majority of their power is already created by nuclear power. So in the other countries, ganun din. So I still think that it's something we should examine. There are many new technologies. One of the ones that we keep reading about are the modular nuclear power plant. They start with a small one. Gusto mong palakihin, bumili ka ulit ng module, ikakabit mo ng palaki hanggang gusto mo. Siguro naman kaya natin patakbuhin ang nuclear power plant. There's no reason na bakit hindi kaya ng Pilipino na magpatakbo ng nuclear power plant. So, it's something that should be part of the mix. Kasama dyan is COP26, where we decided to cut down on coal-fired power generation. And what happened, nagtaasan ng presyo kasi walang kapalit sa renewable. Ibig sabihin, yung mix ng renewable at saka traditional, kailangan talaga natin, we have to decide once and for all, what is the mix that's good for the Philippines. I think it's not going to be a static point. I think as the years go on,
and we develop renewables, we develop other sources of power, that mix is going to slowly shift towards renewables, hopefully, because that's what we want because of climate change. But nonetheless, that mix is still something that's up in the air that we haven't really determined what is proper and appropriate for the Philippine setting. But to make a short answer to your question, is that lahat kailangan natin. Kailangan natin palakihin ng hydroelectric, kailangan natin palakihin yung geothermal, kailangan natin paramihan ng mga power plant, kailangan natin tumingin sa mga bagong technologies, wind farm, solar, kailangan natin tingnan ng nuclear. At kung kailangan talaga, di balikan natin oil-fired. But oil-fired has become less and less attractive because of what's happening in the volatility of oil prices, especially in the last 2-3 years. Then with this new development in Ukraine, talagang kailangan pag-isip-isipan natin ng mabuti. Kasi baka maipit tayo, pag tumaas na naman yan, hindi natin may patakbo yung planta natin, balik na naman tayo sa dati, nasa brownout na naman tayo. Now we have lots of coal here in the Philippines. The Chinese claim to have good enough technology. I've actually visited one of their coal-fired plants that na malinis na. That they're able to extract the carbon and they're able to dispose of the carbon properly. So all of these things we need to look into. Lahat yan kailangan natin.
Well, after the generating companies, meron po tayong Transco. Maraming reklamo sa Transco. Senador, open ba kayo sa idea na katulad ng tubig, may west sector operator, may east sector operator, chop natin ang Transco?
I don't think so. May economies of scale yan eh. Ang business model ng high tension ng delivery na ginagamit ng Transco is the same as a tollway. You maintain the tollway, you collect toll, and that's how you pay for what you build. That's the same thing that Transco should be doing. Yun lamang, siguro hindi sapat. Sa amin lang, marami kaming pangangailangan dyan sa Transco. We were hoping to build a high-tension cable from Ilocos Norte to directly export the power we are producing via windmills directly to Manila because that's where the demand is. And it's more profitable for us. But hanggang ngayon, hindi pa nangyayari. And I'm not sure. I'm not privy to the board meetings and the discussions going on in Transco. So I do not know quite why wala pa yan. But yes, it really should be a simple operation na kahit madali lang naman patakbuhin dapat yan. Kaya pag-aralan natin kung bakit nagkakaganon. You mentioned EPIRA. We have to look back at EPIRA. I think EPIRA might already have at least certain provisions in EPIRA are already obsolete. As a matter of fact.
Senator?
Yes.
I hope you don't mind. I'd like to switch topics a little bit because we have a short period. I'd like to ask about agriculture because you've mentioned that in the last time you were here. One of the biggest problems that the sector is facing is the aging of farmers.
Yes.
One study I've read said that their average age is between 57 and 59. And the worst thing is their children don't want to go into agriculture. And this observation is supported by declining enrollment in agricultural programs of SUCs across the nation. And last, the Secretary of Agriculture last year said that we may be facing a critical shortage of farmers in as little as 12 years. And he said this last year. So maybe you'd like to share with us what your plans are regarding this issue.
Regarding the age of farmers getting older, not only are they discouraged to come in, their parents who are farmers, they say, wag na kayong pumasok dito, napakahirap ng buhay dito. Mag-aral kayo, pumunta kayo sa Manila, pumunta kayo sa city, dyan kayo magpagaling para hindi nyo na kailangan daanan itong dinadaanan namin. That's the state of the agriculture in the Philippines today. As a general rule, as a general concept, I think
we have to really shift already from what is essentially still mom and pop operation and talk about agribusiness and talk about the industry of agriculture. And there are many things that we need to do to achieve that, to get to that point. See, let's go back to the issue of the age of our farmers and the young people who are not going into agriculture. If it is an agribusiness, if it is not the traditional farming method that we are always going through, that we have been doing for the last millennia, but move into something that is more high-tech, then that will necessarily need for the entry into more technically minded agribusiness practitioners, and that will bring the age younger immediately. I know already for myself, young people, the people in their 30s who have discovered some new technology or have come across a new thing. Bagay sa atin to, gawin natin. And they do, and they have brought all kinds of new techniques to farming, but it's not yet extensive because there are no encouragements coming from government in terms of tax breaks, in terms of I don't really believe in subsidies in that regard, but we can improve the attractiveness of the agricultural sector to younger people if we use the most modern, most interesting technology. And the kids say they can geek it out. Right? They'll just pag-aaralan nila ng mabuti. That's a very interesting. It will become a very interesting line of work.
Is there an important role for government to play? Because if you look at the public spending on agriculture in the Philippines, it's only about 1.7% of the national budget, far below what is being spent in other ASEAN countries.
Yes, it's been that, and it has been that way for a long time. I think we have really neglected agriculture because we had the system set up where the entire value chain was attended to by government. And of course, there are the private sector practitioners come into the picture during the trading and in the market. But that was dismantled in 1986 and has not been a replacement for it. So we have to do it again. And if we look at the countries that we are competing with in terms of rice production, for example, they're Thailand and Vietnam, the obvious ones. Their cost of production is lower. The labor segment of their production cost is 1/2 of ours. And that's due to mechanization. We have not mechanized at all. It's going to take, it's not a simple thing because we have to organize now to be able to mechanize properly, to use the big machines, the big tractors, the big harvesters. Yung nakikita natin sa ibang bansa na ginagamit, nakalaki-laki, na ang bilis-bilis, siguro sa isang araw, ilang hektarya na nakocover nila. Pero ang average na land holding dito sa Pilipinas is less than 1 hectare. So hindi mo magamit yung mga ganung klaseng makina. So the way to do it, or the way we did it in Ilocos, was we organized the cooperatives. And in that way, we were able to take full advantage of economies of scale. And I think that's what we need to do here in the Philippines now. But there are other things that need to be done as well. We have, I think the fact that we are importing galunggong has been made very, very public. It's been very, very clear that it is quite a surprise for us to get into that situation. But again, it really comes from a neglect and the agricultural sector. So the things we have to do the research and development for the new varieties, for the new yung kung nag-aalaga ng hayop, paano yung gagawin yung pagkalat ng mga inahin. Again, these are different schemes that we have to put together. In our fisheries, there is a very, very good potential for us kung ayusin lang natin ang ating kinukuhanan ng isda. Number one. Bigyan natin yung mga mangingisda na mas malaking bangka. Maliliit lang yung bangka nila eh. And they have to go out already 12 kilometers kasi overfish na dito sa loob. And then of course, patrol so that maraming nagpo-poach sa atin. So we have to have all the best techniques and technologies for our farmers and for our fishermen. Fisher folk. So that's just the beginning of it. And then the support. Now, one of the biggest problems that the agricultural industry is facing right now in terms of crops is urea is 2,500 pesos now. And we know of many areas where farmers just didn't plant. And that kills our production. Taas na naman ang importation natin. Because kaya minsan, kung kulang talaga. Kung pabayaan mo yan, tataas naman ang presyo, hindi na kaya ng tao. Kaya talagang kailangan ayusin yung agrikultura. So you have to support, the government has to support that. This question of urea, for example, siguro ang gobyerno lang bibili in bulk, hundreds of tons of urea, and then isama na yan sa production loan. Bago planting season, magbibigay ka ng production loan sa farmer, yung iba pera, yung iba seedlings, yung iba abono, the fertilizer, at saka yung pesticide. And then you could support them with new techniques, the techno demos, teach them what are the new plants, what are the new techniques, how you can save water, how you can save on the other inputs, etc., etc. And then the processing. You know, it should not really be allowed anymore. Dapat in the year 2022, dapat wala na tayong nakikitang palay na tinutuyo sa highway. Dahil dapat meron na tayong binigay. Yan, si Rolex knows this well from, because sa local talagang yun ang problema eh. So, tapos yung mga milling, dapat talaga meron tayong milling na small scale, large scale, depending on everyone. So the value stays with the farmer. Hindi pumupunta sa trader na may malaking milling na planta. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the traders. They have a part to play. But let's keep as much of the value added and give it back to the farmer. And then, if we're able to do that, gumanda ang ating production, mumura ang ating production cost, we can directly sell it. And the kadiwa is the example that we always use. We can sell it to the public at a lower price, assuming the government will not make a profit, because the government should not make a profit. So they should be able to sell these basic agricultural products for less.
Mr. Marcos,
Yes,
we all know that your campaign's theme is unity. And recently, you made a statement on an issue that, would test your call for unity, because this issue is really polarizing in our country. And I'm referring to your statement on LGBTQ rights. And so my question is, there are a lot of interests that had to be balanced here, especially that even though that we are a secular country, our people, around 80% of our people have really, really strong religious beliefs, and these two things, are always contrary to each other. So my question is, how will you balance the legitimate aim of protecting the rights and welfare of LGBTQ people while at the same time respecting the legitimate interests of religious groups that they can freely pursue their belief on this matter?
I don't think LGBTQ issues are polarizing in the Philippines, honestly. I think we are much more open-minded about it, considering the fact that we are in fact a very Roman Catholic country. But then you must, and so that I don't think it's polarizing at all. I think Filipinos are, I don't know how to put it, but we're much cooler than most other places when it comes to these things. So, and I think when I talk to the members of that community, wala namang hinihingi na special treatment ng mga LGBTQ. Wag lang, do not discriminate against us. Yun lang naman yun eh. We don't want a special program for you, for ourselves. You have to want to, do something. Just patas lang. Patas lang, pare-pareho lang. Na kahit LGBTQ kami, kahit matanda kami, kahit come from the wrong place, I don't know, whatever. All forms of discrimination are some things that we have to guard against because that's corrosive. That just gets in the way. It doesn't help. It doesn't help anything. So that I think is the approach to LGBTQ issues: is just fight discrimination every step of the way. Um, there's a pool of talent in every sector of our society that we need
Si Kuya
to take
Jupang.
advantage of.
Mag-switch na daw ako.
So we cannot exclude any part and say hindi pwede yan, hindi na ayaw namin sa ganyan. And let me get to the point. I mean, LGBTQ, Roman Catholic, you say that it's wrong. What did the Pope say when he was asked about same-sex marriage, same-sex union? Let me correct myself. Same-sex union. And I think the Pope said it perfectly. Who am I to judge? And that's the attitude that we all of us should have. And with that, I think we'll go down the correct place. We will go down the right path.
Yeah, I think this
Sorry,
will be...
Professor Carlos, I know that you warned me about senior citizens losing their train of thought, but I have been instructed to go on a commercial break. So
we have
we'll
to go on a
start
break?
off. Yes, we'll start the next round with your question.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, everyone. We have more questions coming from our panel. So don't go away. The Deep Probe SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview will be right back.
Ayan, patalastas na naman. Ako po, pinagsiswitch na ako ni Kuya Jupang kay BBM daw. Ang masasabi, so far, kay BBM Boss Andy. Okay naman. Maganda ang interview niya, maganda magpaliwanag siya eh. Sige lang. Ni-special po nga siya dito ng pakinggan eh. Isang oras, parang isang oras mahigit ang bawat isa. Hindi ko lang alam ah. Kasi kanina pa siya. Siya ang huli eh. Siya ang huling interview. Yes, Miguel up shout out kay Golden Heart Shadow, harang pa. Maraming salamat po sa pagpunta niyo sa aking bahay. Ayan. Ako, 1 million in my house. Ang dami naman tao, 1 million talaga. Hindi ka pa din mag-switch? Secret. Basta ako makikinig ako. Kay BBM. Makikinig lang ako. Marami pang debate mangyayari. Golden, salute madam, sabi ni Kuya Jupao. Tatapusin lang natin yan. Hindi ko naman kailangan mag-live ng matagal. May pasok ako bukas, Kuya Jupang. May pasok ako. $1 million in my house. Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat po. Oh, feeling ko mag-switch yan si Boss Andy. Kita mo talagang inaabangan si BBM. Alam ko mag-switch ka kay Boss Andy. Secret. Basta ako manonood ako. Pinapanood ko lahat ng mga debate. Pati yung mga interview. Kasi gusto ko marinig eh. Ang tagal lang kasi ng basta pagkatapos ng live niya, tapos na rin tayo. Mega love shout out, Sergio Pang, Gasol, sabi ni Golden Heart. Kumusta ka na, Golden Heart? Hindi ka ba namundok ngayon? Hindi ka ba pumuntang bundok ngayon, Golden Heart? Uy, nandyan na. Anong pasalubong mo, Yorika? Grabe, hindi man nagbili ng ano, ihaw-ihaw. Sa SMNI lang yun, pinaka-detail sa lahat na interview at debate. Malalaman natin sa mga susunod. Marami pa. 1 million in my house. Maraming salamat. Ganang patalastas Live, the deep probe, the SMNI presidential candidate. Biglang daming ang tao 165,000 na May mga nagsisend ng pera 165 bigla. Anong si BBM na in-interview? Kanina, nung di pa in-interview si BBM, ang nanonood 74,000. Nung magsimula si BBM, nag-165,000 kaagad. Kalahati ang dinagdag. Ibig sabihin, yung kalahati ng 74,000, si BBM ang inaabangan. Kasi 74, tapos naging 165. Grabe, Yung kalahati noon, si BBM ang inaabangan. Mahigit pa. Hindi. Masakit sa ang upuan ko. Inaantay ko yung mag-sponsor ng upuan ko. Masakit sa likod. Yan kahoy ang upuan ko sa dining table namin. Kaya napapagod ako mag-live ng matagal. Mega love shout out. 0 million in my house. Ayan na.
We're back with the Deep Probe, the SMNI Presidential Candidates Interview. And again, 1 hour went by so quickly. So we're down to the last question for our last candidate for the evening. To start off with our last question, Professor Carlos.
Okay, there is, I know, Mr. Marcos, that
Professor Carlos, I know you're gonna love me for this. You're wearing your sunglasses again.
sorry again. Okay, mag-forgive na kayo ha. You will all be 75 also. Unless you die young. Hello. Umirit pa yan. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a sense that this will be the last time I shall interact with you in a venue like this. So, let me introduce something which I have tested in my class on elites and politics. And this involves moving into an area called predicting leadership decision-making. So I hope you don't mind if I give you 3 short questions, but they are related to each other. And it will give our people a chance to know you in terms of your leadership style. The first question is, do you think that you're basically an optimist rather than a pessimist? Number 2, do you think you are basically a high-risk taker rather than a low-risk taker? You'll notice the 2 are related. And the third question is, do you think you are Machiavellian?
Well, the first question is if I'm an optimist or a pessimist. I'm essentially an optimist. Because especially when we talk about the country, we are optimists. I am optimistic because our biggest asset is the Filipino people, and it's not.
I try to be very objective about it, ma'am. I have traveled all over the world. I have not met a better people than Filipinos in every possible, every possible. Am I a risk taker or not? When it comes to national issues, I am 10 towards a conservative only because a mistake will cost so much suffering to so many people. In other words, you have to be very careful with the decisions you make. And it's not something that you do offhand. You think about it very hard. You talk to as many people as you can. And you make absolutely certain that you have done everything that you can possibly do to make whatever your plan is, to make it work. Am I Machiavellian? Well, I've studied him quite thoroughly. And I know very many Machiavellians in my life. But
Is it Machiavelli in terms of taking every means to produce an end, not the other Machiavellian, the bad Machiavellian?
Well, certainly, we have to be aware of everything that is going to help whatever it is that you are hoping to achieve. And on a national scale, that means you have to understand very well what the situation is on the ground. Ganito kasi ang sitwasyon ng mga tao, eto na ngayon sila. Nasa gitna pa ng pandemya, walang trabaho yung mga yan. Maasa pa rin yan sa tupad, sa IX, etc. O paano tayo lalabas niyan? Where will what are the other countries doing? Kailangan maging maingat so I suppose in the same sense, as you say, these questions were related, it's a way of being careful and being very, very knowledgeable about what are the things that have to come into play so that you will achieve success, whatever that success, however you define that success. So in that sense, yes, ma'am, I am a Machiavellian.
Yeah, thank you. In future, if you have time, please come to the university and I will discuss with you. It's called the Operational Code Construct. Thank you very much.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you both very much. Thank you.
So sorry, I know we were getting requests for extension, but we want to be strict about keeping it to 1 hour for all of the presidential candidates.
Kasang oras.
So, Senator Marcos, you have the floor for your closing remarks.
Well, first of all, I thank again our panelists and SMNI for this opportunity to speak on the many issues that have yet to be explored. And the format as well, I think, is quite constructive. So thank you to SMNI for that. Thank you to our panelists here. I hope to continue to lay out what programs that form a part of the platform, the planks of the platform, for the possibility for the next administration, for the possibilities for the next administration. And that's why such opportunities such as this are very, very important. And I hope that we have been able to impart some of the ideas that I'm examining and trying to put together to bring to the next administration should I be elected to the presidency. So we hope that we continue with this discussion. I hope that people come and think about it. And if they have any ideas, please come and tell us because we need to hear from everyone. We need everyone. That is the cry of the unity team, is that we cannot say that anyone is not needed. Everyone is needed in this effort that we are trying to do to get through the pandemic, to recover our economy from the problems that the pandemic has brought, and to position the Philippines to face the new world order and what will happen in the next few years. So thank you all very much, and thank you for the opportunity. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Ayan. Ayan, tapos na. Magandang gabi.
Maraming salamat po, Senator Bongbong Marcos, and maraming salamat to all our panelists. Sa pamamagitan ng SMNI Deep Probe,
Hi, salamat. Maraming salamat din po. Ay, si Kuya Jo po, alam na Boss Andy, Swiss na yan. Ibang ngiti. Maraming salamat din po sa pumunta sa aking bahay. Sa pakikinig ng live interview kay BBM. Thank you so much. Lalo po si Kuya Jo po, grabe yan, fanatic talaga yan. Tindi niya. Tinan mo, inabangan ako hanggang matapos. Tag-isang oras lang kasi bawat isa eh. Isang oras lang bawat isa. Yes, 1 million in my house. Ano kaya? Magpapahinga na rin ako. Tama na siguro yung isang oras. Kuya Jupang, maraming salamat po. Ano ba? At may pasok pa ako bukas. May pasok ako. Pinag-overtime kami. Sabi ni Kuya Jupang, alam na Boss Andy, Swiss na yan. Ibang ngiti eh. Thank you all. Salamat po, maraming salamat po. Mag-i-end na po tayo. Kuya Jupang, mag-i-end na ako. Anong oras na ba? Ay, alas 9:30 na eh. Thank you po. 1 million in my house, maraming salamat po. Ako po yung mag-i-end na, then may pasok pa ako bukas. Thank you po. God bless po sa inyong lahat. Bye-bye. Salamat po. Thank you po. Thank you.